Welcome to the People Leaders Podcast, the audio resource for managers and business leaders creating high-performing teams. Join leadership and team development experts Jen and Michelle Turkelson each week as they explore both subjects from every angle. Through practical tips, valuable insights, and compelling interviews with leadership experts around the world, you'll learn how to bring out the best in your staff and how to give your best as a leader.
Welcome back, Jen.
Thanks, Michelle. Big day today.
Yes, indeed. Today, we're wrapping up our series of the People Leaders High Performing Team Assessment Tool, and we're going to enter the 8th dimension, which is
renewal, as it relates to high performing teams. And a couple of the other podcasts, Michelle, we talked about all the technical inputs that make a high-performing team, like the processes and the communication and the stakeholder relationships and those elements. And when we first developed the high-performing team assessment tool, we didn't have this as an element, did we? No. And over the years, more and more clients are coming to us with issues around resilience, mental clarity, and well-being. And what we have been very, very clear for our point of view is that high-performing teams can sustain a high level of performance. And the most important indicator of that is your health. So mental, emotional, physical well-being. That is what is going to help you sustain high levels of performance. It makes sense. But there is that science to support that as well. So that the brain in positive is, up to 31% more effective in their decision making, in its ability to, creatively solve problems. So the first element in renewal is that there are little to no barriers for team members to take advantage of organisational flexible work practices.
So I don't think that there's one organisation at the moment that we know of that doesn't try in some way to, institute flexible work practices, or they have health and well-being options available on site for people, whether it's taking advantage of gym memberships, massages. We're working with clients now and they all have meditation rooms. However, how many people are taking advantage of it? So it's one thing to have these flexible work practices, but as a manager, are you encouraging your people to take advantage of them? Are you creating an environment where it's easy for them to take advantage of it? Are you actually almost giving them permission, saying, how are you? I know you've got a lot of pressure on at the moment. Why don't you go and have a little, 20-minute, downtime in the meditation room or something like that. So it's not just about having them available, but it's the manager almost giving permission or encouraging people to take advantage of it.
I think being explicit, Michelle. Yeah. I think absolutely being explicit about this is my expectation for the team is to really look after their health and well-being. How can I support you? And these are some of the things that I would see. What we do know is that some of the teams that we have worked with that are high performing is that the manager does actively have those safety moments of mental well-being. So at the beginning of a meeting, they just do a bit of a check-in. Is everyone feeling? What is it that they need to do more of and less of? And everyone helps and supports each other in that resilience and well-being.
Really good point, Jan. Riff has this model, 1989, of psychological well-being, where he talks about there are a number of factors that feed into someone's psychological well-being, like, do you have environmental mastery? So that's, is there a degree of control that I have over my environment? Is there an opportunity for personal growth? Is there an opportunity to build positive relationships? Do I have a sense of purpose in life? And then it's, more about me. Is there a degree of self-acceptance? And to what degree do I feel autonomous? So you can see how absolutely, as a manager, you could impact several areas of someone's psychological well-being. just looking at that in terms of how much autonomy do they have over the work that they have. Are you helping them foster positive relationships, etc.? Is there an opportunity for personal growth that exists within the team? So that
makes up a lot of the characteristics that we've talked about before in our podcast. You know, this is supported by evidence-based research, all the elements that we've talked about. So in Renewal, looking at the well-being aspects among team members, the workflow of the team is challenging, it's realistic, and it's sustainable. Now, there are going to be, I suppose, instances where the team really have to work perhaps long hours, but it's for a very short, definitive time frame for a specific outcome. But when the team is challenged in a way that allows them to explore their boundaries a little bit, that really does set people up for a good sense of meaning and purpose, because they're driven, but it has to be realistic as well.
Correct.
And then managers sometimes go, how do I work that out? You know how you work it out? You ask them.
Yeah.
You consistently check in with your team, you know, like, and what I mean consistently, it may not be every day, but at least it's at least once a week, checking in with your team, just touching base with them. It doesn't have to take a long time, but there is structure to those conversations. The next aspect about Renewal is that there are opportunities that exist within the day-to-day operations for team members to take advantage of self-renewal strategies and practices, just like we mentioned before. So is there an opportunity for me to take 20 minutes to go and walk? If I sit at my desk and have lunch, is that seen as a great thing, or is that seen as, actually, why don't you go outside and get some sun on you, or sit around and share a meal at lunchtime? Remember we were talking, Michelle, you mentioned something yesterday about a manager who...
Well, there is a manager who, in an organisation we're working with, who has lunch with their team, with her team members every single day. And she doesn't, it doesn't stipulate that people should have lunch together. However, what is interesting is that, harking back to an article we were reading before, is I think there was an organisation when they started taking coffee breaks at the same time, which they used to do, years ago, productivity went up, because that was the opportunity for downtime, for relationship building, for those side conversations that don't happen in the formal meetings, and their productivity went up, as is the case with this manager. She has great productivity. Other teams look at how well they're functioning. They're high performing, highly engaged, and really good performance ratings. So it's working.
Another manager that I was coaching a little while ago, and what he would do is he would have a team meeting every week, and one would be a formal meeting where they go through what they're accountable for and responsible, and what they need to do to complete projects. And then every second meeting would be, he would bring in a plate of fruit or brownies or something delicious for morning tea, and they would put on a TEDx video, and they would watch that. And so and then they would discuss what that was about. So there was a little bit of learning, there was interaction, it was a little bit informal, and it helped the team to realise differences of an opinion based on what that TEDx talk was about. And usually the TEDx talks were about positive communication, how to look after yourself, well-being strategies.
And it's funny, because if you have a look at the attributes of a team that does have a culture of well-being, because what they're saying is that well-being and engagement leads to high performance. So there's a lot of data out there suggesting that. But some of the attributes that we'd find in a team that did have a culture of well-being, where it did matter, would be things like, they value the whole employee, not just the person that clocks in at 8 and finishes at 4. There is a feeling of trust and trustworthiness. There's transparency. It has an optimistic vibe about it. There is resilience built in and flexible, and they have a learning orientation to how they move through their work day. And they invest.
Yeah, they invest. So one of the other indicators on the high-performing team aspect of Renewal is that team members are rewarded for their effectiveness and outcomes. So not just the amount of hours they spend at work. And this is very important in our line of work, Michelle, where we see teams that are very effective, but it's all outcome based. It's what they're actually, producing. It's not just about the time that they spend at work in front of people. And what do you need for that? You need trust.
And you have a look at every organisation now. They are building in. It's not actually where you work. It's what you produce, or the outcomes. Being measured by your outcomes, and it doesn't occur by you sitting at your desk necessarily. So because we're a more highly educated workforce, we don't need to be monitored so closely by our supervisor looking over our shoulder. Those days are gone. I hope.
Yeah. Oh, and also, Gen Ys wouldn't put up with that. They absolutely need flexibility and freedom. And on our Renewal aspect of high-performing teams, the conditions within the team allow team members the freedom to use their expertise and talents to add real value. And this is where this sense of meaning and purpose comes in, because if you are not allowing team members to use their strengths and talents, first of all, you're just not getting the most out of them. You're not building their capability, and you're not leveraging their strengths. You're not building engagement. So there are just so many add-ons for this. Now, if I'm in a people leader position, the challenge for me is that, so how do I ensure that all my team members are using their strengths and talents? You ensure that by having conversations with them, and you don't have to come up with all the answers. Part of that is in a performance conversation that you have with them every fortnight. Around. So how are you tracking with some of your objectives and goals? How can I support you? Do you feel that you've been challenged enough? So if you were to be challenged more, what would that look like? You don't have to have the answers, but you actually ask the questions. And this is this coach approach that you ask people for what it is that they want, and ask them to solve those issues as well, because this allows them to see where their opportunities are in the organisation, and it shows them that you're giving or allowing them to solve their own issues. That's empowerment. And, empowerment is a key indicator of an engaged workforce.
That's right. And what we do know is that well-being is a prerequisite to true engagement at work. And well-being and engagement does lead to high performance. And that's what every manager wants for their team.
Yeah.
A high-performing team.
And as a people leader, are you championing that? Are you demonstrating and role modelling that in some way? Like, it doesn't mean, you have to be a champion cyclist or whatever, but are you in some way looking after your mental health or your physical or emotional health? And are you in team meetings bringing those up in safety moments? So a lot of the safety moments can be about the physical safety around fire exits and things like that, but sometimes it is about the mental health. So an exercise could be that today our team, our challenge for us is that we are only going to speak positively. We're not going to talk about if we have a difficult stakeholder. We are going to see the upside in every situation today, and see whether or not that takes a lot of mental challenge and will to do that.
The thing about some of these changes or improvements or tweaks to well-being is that it isn't rocket science, and it doesn't have to take a very sort of well thought out plan. They could be mini challenges that you set with the team each week. You could all measure how many steps you take in the course of a week. You put, what are those pedometers on everybody, hand them around for a week, and you try that. Then you actually, give it to somebody else to come up with something the next week and the next week. Yeah. I mean, what an easy way, not only for you to show that you care.
And that reminds me, a couple of years ago, that's what a team did, is that they did have pedometers, and then they mapped it, because they're all techies, and so they mapped it, and then they mapped it over the world if they were to walk across the world, and they just, built on that.
And it shows you care about them, about the whole person.
And then you hand over that responsibility to some other team member, and then on it goes. So everyone becomes engaged because they're a little bit accountable for it. So that's what we would invite you to do is when you're listening to this, just think about if you were to just shift one thing slightly. Now, I'm just talking about a 5% shift here, or a 10% shift in a behaviour or a mental state, because anything more than that, it actually becomes quite stressful. So we want it to be a little bit challenging, but not too much, that you can continue it and it's sustainable. So what could you do personally for yourself, and how could you contribute to the team's well-being and resilience in some way? Great. So that's their challenge for this week. And we're really looking forward to our next session with you guys, where we'll have loads of stories and some research to support you to be either a high performer, whether it's in a team as a people leader or someone who just wants to keep growing.
If you'd like more information about today's show or earlier episodes, please jump over to the peopleleaderspodcast.com, where you'll find recordings of each of the episodes along with show notes and links to the other resources, including our high-performing team assessment tool.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the People Leaders Podcast. For show notes and other resources, please visit us at peopleleaderspodcast.com. While you're there, you can subscribe for future episodes so you can continue your own leadership journey. And please be sure to share this and other episodes with your friends and colleagues. The People Leaders Podcast is brought to you by the Experts on Air Podcast Network.